Beer making is a very popular hobby these days, and I wanted to know exactly what was behind it. So I've invited our science expert, Liz Heineke, to talk to me about exactly what goes into beer making. So we do science time a lot for kids, and you've written a great book about kitchen pantry science for kids, but we're going to talk about beer today. So I didn't bring the kids.
Oh, I didn't bring mine either.
Okay,
we're gonna have some fun.
Okay.
Okay, so yeast isn't just for making bread. When yeast breaks down grains or sugar, the two main things it produces are alcohol and carbon dioxide gas, which obviously are in beer, it's in cider, it's in wine. But today I'm gonna show you how to make beer using grain, yeast, and some hops.
Okay.
That's really all you need. So this is a pre-mix of grain for amber ale that I bought at a local brewing supply store. So we take our grain mix and we're gonna put it into this sock that came with the kit. It's just a cotton sock.
Okay.
And the first thing you need to do is heat water up to a certain temperature because we're gonna add the grain to hot water, and what that does is it activates enzymes that start breaking down carbohydrates, which are like long sugars, right?
Separating out what we don't need from the grains, like breaking it up?
Well, breaking it up so it's easier for the yeast to eat. Because fermentation is basically just yeast eating sugar and giving off alcohol and carbon dioxide gas.
Right.
So it's a simple biochemical reaction.
This is getting sciencey here.
It is kind of sciencey. So we are going to dump all of this grain and then go ahead and tie it off. It's kind of like one of those rice socks you get at the hospital when you just had a baby.
That's exactly what I was having a flashback right now. Okay, yes.
Okay, and then obviously there's no water in here, but imagine that we have heated some water up in here, and then we're just gonna put this in here, and we're gonna let it sit at a certain temperature, like 160 to 170 Fahrenheit, for about an hour, and that's called mashing. Okay. So you've probably heard of mash when they're making grain alcohol, right?
Yes.
Okay, the next thing we wanna do is actually called sparging. So when you take it out of here, you are going to once again have the water at a certain temperature because it's been kind of cooling down, but you're gonna take this out, you're gonna have heated up some other water, and you're gonna ladle it over this grain. So we're basically just rinsing off the grain.
Got it.
Okay, so that's the next step. The last step is to add our hops. Okay. And the hops are the ingredient that give that beer sort of that bitterness, right? And depending on how long you boil the hops, it can be more bitter or less bitter.
Sure. And you have these hops that you got from the supply house.
I do. I got these in the kit from the supply house, and you can see they look like goat food, maybe?
Yeah, like pellets.
Yeah, they're little pellets.
What is this?
This is some hops I got from my friend's garden. So you can see these lovely little cones that they actually use to grind up and get the hops.
Get the hops.
So smell the hops. I mean, it smells like beer, right?
Smells like
beer.
Like pale ale. Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna add the hops into your grain water mash solution. Yes. And then you boil it. And you boil it you actually keep it at a nice rolling boil for about, I think it's about another hour. Okay. And that reduces the volume. So some of the water evaporates. You do it with the lid off. Some of the water evaporates. It reduces the volume of your liquid. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is put it in your fermenter. And this fermenter came with my kit. It's awesome. It's called a big mouth fermenter because it has this big mouth. It has a little bubbler, I think they call it, that you put on it that lets the carbon dioxide gas escape. The coolest part of this, I've discovered, is when the actual fermentation starts. So when you put it in here, you dump in your yeast. So as you add the yeast and let it sit, within a couple hours, you start to see bubbles come up. And you get a foamy layer on top. And it actually looks like a living thing because it's swirling and oh, it's so amazing, yeah. Okay, so when it's all done, it sits for like 2 to 4 weeks, fermenting, making alcohol basically. And then you bottle it. You sterilize the bottles. You add a little sugar to the bottles because once you put the beer in the bottles and put the caps on, you want the yeast to eat a little more sugar to produce carbon dioxide to make your beer bubbly, right?
Yes.
So you use this little bottle filler, you attach it to your siphon. I will siphon my beer from this bottle, once it's in here, into these bottles. I will fill up my bottles with my siphon, and it's super easy. You just pump it to start it. And then I will funnel a little bit of sugar into each bottle, and then I will use this cool cap machine that came with my kit. It has a magnet on it. So you put this here. I'm gonna let you do it. Let's scoot this stuff over.
Okay, so you put the cap.
And then you put this on the bottle. I'm gonna hold it.
If I do this right, it's gonna be really satisfying.
Go for it.
Okay, so you push in.
Push the arms down, actually. Except really hard. Oh, you did it. Ta-da!
I did it!
How cool is that? So
That's the best part.
I know, I can't wait. Making labels might be kind of fun too.
That would actually, those would be my jobs. Yeah. I would leave the beer making it to my husband. Okay.
And one more thing you can do, since my kids have to be involved in every science project I do, is to make root beer with your kids. So you can just buy some root beer mix, you mix it with sugar and water, you boil it. When it cools down, you add some yeast. And at the brewing supply store, you can reuse plastic bottles and sterilize them or use these bottles. You put your root beer yeast mixture in here, put the lid on, you let it sit at room temperature until it feels tight, and then you just put it in the fridge and you're ready for a root beer float party.
Homemade root beer is delicious.
I know, I love it.
All right,
I can't wait to try it.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been
Thank you, Happy.